moment I realized my own son might want me dead, everything changed. I was 72, living alone since Helen had passed, thinking the worst in life was grief and loneliness. I was wrong. The first warning came from a neighbor, an otherwise quiet woman who had overheard Michael talking, my son, about taking control of my estate in ways that made her blood run cold. At first, I thought she must have misunderstood. But the details she recounted matched troubling behavior I'd noticed, subtle manipulations, the pressure to sign papers I hadn't fully read, questions about my will that felt unnerving. The pieces didn't fit neatly into a normal father-son dispute. Something far darker was emerging. I called Jennifer immediately. My lawyer had been someone I trusted for decades, experienced in elder law, sharp, and I realized my only real ally. She listened carefully, her expression tense. "Thomas, this is serious. We're not talking about family squabbles. We're talking about financial exploitation and a potential threat to your life." My stomach sank. Life-threatening. That escalated faster than I could process. Jennifer explained calmly but firmly. I had to act immediately, decisively, and document everything. We started with the will. A new document, signed that very day, stating explicitly that I was of sound mind, acting without coercion. I insisted on clarity, precision, and legal safeguards. Then a durable power of attorney was established, someone professional, someone trustworthy, but crucially not Michael. My bank was notified. Every account flagged. Every transaction monitored. Jennifer emphasized the importance of documenting every interaction, no matter how small, every visit, every phone call, every message. "This builds a case," she said, "not just for protection, but for prosecution if necessary." The reality hit hard. My son had keys to my house, leftovers from past emergencies. I changed every lock immediately. A security company installed cameras, motion sensors, and a video doorbell. My home, once open and welcoming, became a fortress. The locksmith was thorough, every door, every window reinforced. Michael called 4 times that week. I didn't answer. His voicemails changed from casual to increasingly tense, desperate, even demanding. "Dad, just check in. Call me back." Then, "This is ridiculous. What's going on?" I didn't respond. Silence became my shield. But silence didn't last. One Friday, he appeared at my door unannounced. I watched him on the video feed, trying key after key, growing frustrated and then angry. I opened the door cautiously, chain locked. "Hello, Michael," I said, calm on the surface, though my heart raced. His smile was strained, forced, fake. "What's with the new locks?" he asked. I explained the security upgrade, recommended, I lied, by the police after a community safety meeting. His face hardened. "I just want to come in," he said. I refused, citing an appointment with Jennifer. Anger flashed briefly, raw and unfiltered. "What kind of changes?" he demanded. "That's between me and my attorney," I replied firmly. The mask slipped. Fury was visible, uncontained. Then came Derek. My nephew appeared, feigning concern. I stayed firm. Samuel, my closest friend, was watching from his window. We had planned for this. They left eventually, but the exchange revealed their strategy, their emotional manipulation, the dangerous escalation. Their eyes, calculating and cold, lingered even after they drove away. I was shaking. I knew I had to prepare for the next encounter, for whatever came next. The following days were tense. Gifts arrived, flowers, cookies, messages of love and concern. Jennifer warned me, classic manipulation, love bombing, testing my boundaries. I ignored everything. Samuel stored the items securely. Calls came from Derek, pleading, coaxing, trying to normalize the chaos they had created. I refused to engage. Their goal was obvious: weaken my resolve, erode my boundaries, and gain access again. I didn't falter. We documented everything. Every interaction, every gift, every call. The evidence accumulated. Their anger, their desperation, the manipulative patterns, the research Michael had done on estate law, on accidental deaths, on elderly vulnerability. Jennifer coordinated with a former Denver PD detective, Robert Chen, to investigate quietly. Financial records, credit histories, social media activity. Michael and Derek were drowning in debt, and this context made their desperation palpable and dangerous. Their motives were no longer abstract. They were clear, concrete, and threatening. The fear was overwhelming, but for the first time I felt empowered. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't just defending my money, I was defending my life. I implemented every measure recommended: locks, cameras, legal safeguards, documenting patterns, establishing clear boundaries. Each decision, each precaution was a lifeline, a declaration. I will not be controlled, I will not be harmed, I will survive. My home became a place of safety, and I became vigilant, focused, ready. By the end of that first week, I realized something profound. The truth was terrifying, but it was also liberating. I knew what I was facing, I understood the risks, and I had allies I could trust. Jennifer, Samuel, Walter, they were my lifelines in a storm I hadn't anticipated, but that I was determined to weather. The nightmare was only beginning, but I was no longer passive. I was prepared, resolute, and clear-eyed. My son had revealed his true self, and I was ready to face it. The following Monday, Jennifer called me early. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Thomas, I've reviewed everything from Sunday. The video, the audio, the timestamps. This escalation, it's exactly what I feared. Michael and Derek are desperate. They're dangerous." I felt a chill crawl over me. "What do I do now?" I asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. "We go on the offensive," she said. "I've been in contact with Detective Chen all week. He's been digging into their finances, online activity, background, everything. He's found some very concerning things." She opened a thick folder, spreading documents across her desk. Bank statements, credit card records, loan applications. My hands trembled as I scanned the numbers. Michael and Derek were drowning in debt, over $70,000 in credit card balances, behind on loans, a home equity loan, Derek's gambling excursions to Blackhawk online casinos. Every step revealed desperation masked as normal behavior. "7 months ago," Jennifer said, pausing to emphasize the gravity, "Michael started researching Colorado estate law, how to contest wills, how to establish mental incapacity in elderly parents. He also looked up articles on accidental deaths, medication interactions. He deleted them, but Detective Chen recovered everything." My stomach turned. Planning. It wasn't just greed, it was premeditation. Every conversation, every document, every subtle pressure had been a step toward taking everything I had, and my life. Jennifer leaned closer, her voice steady but firm. "Thomas, combined with Samuel's recording, the controlling documents he tried to get you to sign, and his escalating behavior, we now have enough to involve law enforcement. The police, the DA, this is serious." "Will they prosecute?" I asked, fear tightening around my chest. Chen and Jennifer believed so. Elder financial abuse, conspiracy, credible threat of harm. This is exactly the kind of case prosecutors want to make an example of. But it wasn't just the money. It was my life. "If we don't act," Jennifer said, "Michael could succeed in hurting you, or worse." I nodded, swallowing hard. There was no choice. "Do it now." Wednesday morning, I walked into a conference room with Jennifer, Detective Chen, Lisa Park, the assistant DA, and 2 investigators. They recorded my statement carefully. Every detail: Samuel's overheard conversation, the fraudulent estate documents, the confrontation in my yard. They had my video footage, timelines, Michael's escalating desperation, and financial evidence. "Mr. Harrison," Lisa said slowly, each word deliberate, "this is one of the clearest cases of elder financial exploitation I've seen. Your son systematically attempted to gain control of your assets. Based on everything we have, there's credible evidence he intended to cause you harm to accelerate his inheritance." I felt my chest tighten. Hearing it out loud, official, undeniable, made it real. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't confusion. My son had planned against me. "What happens now?" I asked. Chen and Lisa exchanged looks. "Arrest tomorrow. Both Michael and Derek. Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted financial exploitation, criminal conspiracy, and given the evidence of their conversations about causing your death, conspiracy to commit murder." I nodded numbly. "Tomorrow." "Yes, but we wanted your permission first. Technically, Mr. Harrison, we could proceed regardless. It's that serious." Thursday morning, I stayed home, heart hammering. At 11:15 a.m., Jennifer called. "It's done. Arrested, both at their apartment. Michael's being processed, completely done." Relief should have washed over me. Instead, it felt hollow. This was my son, my only child. But the fear, the evidence, the planning, they left no room for sentimentality. That evening, Michael's public defender called. "Mr. Harrison, my client wants to speak with you." I didn't hesitate. "I have nothing to say," I said and hung up. Calls came from Derek's sister, from old friends, from college buddies defending Michael. "It's all a misunderstanding," they insisted. "You've misjudged him." But Jennifer, Samuel, and Walter understood. Children could be predators. The evidence was clear. The preliminary hearing was set for 4 weeks out. Until then, both were out on bail under strict restraining orders. I should have felt safe. I didn't. People who are desperate don't give up. They escalate. The night before the preliminary hearing, at 1:43 a.m., my alarm screamed. Glass shattered at my side window. My heart leapt into my throat. My phone in hand, I activated the emergency system. The camera feed showed Michael, dark clothes, moving quietly through my house. I stayed locked in my bedroom corner. "Police are minutes away," Walter texted. Michael tried my bedroom door. Soft, almost pleading. "Dad, I just want to talk. Open the door." I said nothing. "Dad, please, we can fix this. Tell them to drop the charges." The tone shifted, harder, meaner. "Open the door." He slammed the door frame once, twice. Anger, frustration, rage, every emotion raw and exposed. "You destroyed my life. The money was going to be mine eventually anyway. You selfish old man." Then footsteps, he was retreating. On camera, I saw the police lights flash outside. He froze, hands raised, then handcuffed. In his jacket, pills from my cabinet, enough to kill if misused. Detective Chen arrived. Charges added: breaking and entering, attempted burglary, violation of restraining order, attempted murder. Bail denied. Michael would remain in custody until trial. The preliminary hearing escalated into full court proceedings. Derek attempted a deal, agreeing to testify against Michael. Michael went to trial, his defense trying to paint him as desperate but harmless. Evidence, recordings, search history, videos, all overwhelming. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit financial fraud, attempted financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder. Sentencing was merciless. Michael received 28 years, no parole for 18. Derek got 10, possibility of parole after 6. Justice, finally, tangible. 8 months later, my home was peaceful again. Locks secure, windows reinforced. Buddy and Max, 2 rescued golden retrievers, filled my days with joy. Life insurance canceled. Will updated. 60% to the Animal Rescue League, 40% to scholarships and shelters. Michael excluded entirely. Samuel, Walter, Jennifer, they remained my pillars. Counseling began, woodworking, volunteering, trips, quiet mornings. Simple pleasures restored. I grieved, but I survived. I was safe. And for the first time in years, happiness returned. The nightmare had passed. The battle was over. And I had chosen myself, chosen life, chosen safety. The weeks leading up to Michael's trial were tense. I woke every morning with a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I was safe. Dread because I knew the next chapter was the courtroom, where I'd have to relive every terrifying moment. Every step of Michael's planning, every deceitful conversation, every manipulation. Jennifer called early Monday morning. "Thomas, today's the day we set the trial schedule. Dress professionally, no surprises. Stick to facts. Don't let emotions take over." I nodded, already dressed in a navy suit I hadn't worn in years. My hands shook as I collected all the evidence I'd personally preserved. Videos, emails, the gift baskets, the broken door frame photos, everything. Jennifer had organized it meticulously. Samuel drove me to the courthouse. He spoke little, only offering quiet reassurances. Walter had accompanied us to the first day of the preliminary hearing weeks ago, but this was different. This was the main event. Michael's presence would be unavoidable. In the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Michael sat at the defense table, looking pale, eyes darting nervously, trying to mask fear with defiance. Derek was in another corner, solemn, having already pleaded guilty, awaiting sentencing. His presence was muted, his guilt palpable. Lisa Park, the DA, opened the proceedings. She spoke clearly, methodically laying out the charges. Elder financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder. She did not exaggerate. Every word hit like a hammer. Exposing Michael's pattern of manipulation, greed, and escalating violence. The first day of testimony was mine. I was nervous but prepared. Jennifer whispered, "Stick to facts, not feelings. Let the evidence do the talking." Samuel gave me a nod from the gallery. I took a deep breath, standing before the judge, the jury, Michael, and his lawyer. "I am Thomas Harrison," I began, voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "I am here to recount actions taken by my son, Michael Harrison, which threatened my life, my assets, and my well-being. Everything I say is true to the best of my knowledge." I walked through the timeline carefully. The strange calls, the uninvited visits, the documents he wanted me to sign, the escalating behavior in my yard, the audio Samuel had recorded, the gifts meant to manipulate me, and finally, the attempted break-in. Each detail was factual, measured, deliberate. I left out the emotions, the fear, the anger, the heartbreak. Those could wait. Cross-examination was brutal. Michael's public defender tried every tactic to discredit me. "Are you certain your son intended harm? Could Samuel have misheard? Could these search histories and documents have innocent explanations?" My answers were calm, precise. "Yes, I am certain. No, Samuel did not mishear. No, the evidence is overwhelming. The searches were specific, premeditated, and linked to his intent." Detective Chen testified next. He presented Michael's financial records, the recovered deleted articles, and the detailed investigation into both Michael and Derek's debt and activities. Each document, each screenshot, was a nail in the coffin of the defense's narrative. The jury listened intently, occasionally exchanging glances as the picture of desperation and intent formed. Then came the testimony of Samuel and Walter. Both had been present for key moments, recording conversations, witnessing visits, and providing critical corroboration. Samuel's account of overhearing Michael planning methods of harm was factual, without exaggeration. Walter recounted the behavior patterns, the gifts, and the escalating aggression. Their presence made my own statements credible, supported, undeniable. Michael's defense tried to argue motive, financial desperation, but the prosecution emphasized intent. Planning, preparation, and actionable steps toward fraud and harm were undeniable. Each deleted search history article, every video, every forced attempt to manipulate or control me was presented in chronological order. The defense's strategy began to crumble when they called their own expert witness, a psychologist, to testify about potential cognitive decline on my part. The expert's conclusions were vague, weak, and contradicted by the documentation and the professional evaluations from Jennifer and Dr. Rachel Stone. The jury didn't seem swayed. The clear, documented evidence spoke louder. Michael testified on the third day. He looked smaller than I remembered, his bravado gone, replaced by anger thinly disguised as indignation. "I was just trying to help my father," he said, voice rising. "He's paranoid, confused, misunderstanding everything." I felt a pang of grief, partly for the son I had loved, partly for the boy I remembered, and partly for the man he had become. I held my composure. I didn't respond. I let the evidence speak. The closing arguments were stark. Lisa Park's voice was calm, deliberate, unflinching. "Mr. Harrison targeted his father, planning to take his life and assets. Every step was documented, every intention deliberate, every threat real. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a calculated pattern of abuse and attempted murder." Michael's public defender tried a last-ditch appeal to empathy, pleading for the jury to consider him a desperate man. But the jury had seen the evidence, watched the videos, listened to the witnesses, and understood the intent. Deliberations lasted 4 hours. Every minute stretched, my stomach tight with anxiety. Then the verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern man with white hair and a voice that carried the weight of decades, addressed Michael directly. "Mr. Harrison, you saw your father not as a human being, but as an obstacle to wealth. You attempted to manipulate, coerce, and even take his life. The court finds you a danger to society and your victims. You are sentenced to 28 years, no parole eligibility for 18. Let this be a clear warning that such actions against family and the vulnerable will meet full justice." Michael's face twisted into rage. He screamed, "This is your fault. You're supposed to love me. You're my father." I remained silent, voice barely audible. "I do love you. That's why I protected myself." The courtroom doors closed behind him. Justice had been served. Relief washed over me in slow, cautious waves, mingled with the sorrow of the son I had lost to greed and violence. After the trial, life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. My house felt safe for the first time in months. The broken window was replaced, the frame reinforced, and the security system remained active, a silent shield that let me breathe again. The tension that had filled every corner of my home gradually began to lift. I no longer flinched at sudden noises or the sight of cars in the driveway. I kept to my routine. Mornings with Buddy and Max, the golden retrievers I had adopted from the Animal Rescue League, became sacred. Their energy and unconditional affection reminded me of the simple joys I had long neglected. Samuel continued to visit daily, bringing coffee, conversation, and companionship. He never mentioned Michael or the trial unless I brought it up. His presence was a comforting anchor, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this new chapter. The courtroom drama had left scars, however. Some nights I woke suddenly, heart racing, convinced I heard glass breaking or footsteps in the hallway. But each time Buddy and Max were there, Samuel had checked in, and the cameras recorded nothing. Slowly, I began to understand that safety wasn't just about locks and alarms. It was about trusting the precautions I had put in place. I also started therapy with Dr. Rachel Stone, a specialist in family trauma. She helped me process the paradox of my emotions, grief for the son I had lost, anger at the son he had become, and relief at my survival. "You're allowed to love him and protect yourself," she said gently in one session. "Those are not opposite things. Both can be true." I spent time documenting everything from the trial, writing down events and emotions. This was partly for closure, partly for clarity. Writing made the nightmare tangible, but also put it at a distance. Each word was a reminder of how far I had come. Friendship and connection became a focus. Walter and I grew closer through shared experiences. Weekends were spent on short trips, sometimes to the mountains, sometimes to Arizona, where the open space and sun reminded me that life still held beauty. At home, woodworking became more than a hobby, it was a meditation. Every piece I built, every repair I made in the community center, every smile from someone I helped, reinforced that my life still had purpose. I also made a conscious effort to use the wealth Michael had wanted so desperately for good. The updated will left 60% to the Animal Rescue League, a cause Helen and I had long cared about. The remaining 40% funded trade school scholarships and supported a homeless shelter. I watched students receive their first scholarships, young people stepping into careers that might have been out of reach otherwise. Knowing that the money I had saved for decades was creating real change gave me a sense of satisfaction and justice I had never felt before. I avoided discussing Michael in casual conversation. I didn't display his photos, but I kept them, stored safely in the garage, a record of the life I had once known. Some days I thought of him, wondering if he would ever truly understand the harm he had caused. I hoped justice would guide him, even if it was through punishment. News of the trial faded from the neighborhood slowly. Gossip dwindled, replaced by normal rhythms of daily life. People now knew me as Thomas, the man who had faced impossible choices and survived. Those who had believed Michael's story either drifted away or adapted. The neighborhood settled into a quiet rhythm, no longer shadowed by scandal. Volunteering became a meaningful outlet. I taught home repair skills at a local community center for elderly people, many of whom shared stories of family pressure or financial manipulation. My advice was simple: trust your instincts, document everything, and seek professional guidance. Jennifer's card became a resource I handed to every attendee who needed legal support. Helping others avoid the nightmare I had endured gave me a renewed sense of purpose. Evenings were quieter now. I spent time in the garden, enjoying the blooms of tulips and roses, each petal a reminder of resilience. The dogs curled at my feet while I read or worked on woodworking projects. Music played softly in the background. I could finally sit without the constant vigilance that had once consumed me. Months later, I received updates through Jennifer about Michael and Derek. Derek had embraced religious study in prison, found a measure of peace, and accepted responsibility for his actions. Michael, however, remained angry and bitter, refusing counseling or rehabilitation programs. Letters arrived occasionally, 5 in total, all filled with blame and demands. Jennifer screened them first. I never responded. The hardest part was mourning, not for Helen, who had been gone 4 years, but for the son I had raised and lost to greed and violence. Dr. Stone reminded me that grief wasn't linear, and that feeling relief didn't negate sorrow. It was a strange, layered emotion, but necessary for healing. Life had regained color, purpose, and routine. I painted the living room, turned the guest room into a hobby space, and reconnected with friends who understood my new boundaries. The money I had saved was no longer a source of danger. It was a tool for good. My house was secure, my friends loyal, and my mind alert. I realized, finally, that safety was more than locks and cameras. It was about clear boundaries, support systems, and making choices aligned with survival and integrity. And I had done all of it. Buddy and Max were my daily reminders of joy. Walter and Samuel reminded me of human kindness. Dr. Stone reminded me that trauma could be worked through. And the Animal Rescue League reminded me that even after tragedy, I could create life, hope, and happiness for others. I was free from fear. I was no longer under the shadow of Michael's greed and threat. I had survived, rebuilt, and reclaimed my life. The nightmare was over. What remained was the opportunity to live fully, carefully, and with the knowledge that my instincts and decisions had saved me, and that sometimes love for oneself must come first. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a rhythm I had never thought I could achieve after everything with Michael and Derek. The house, once a place of fear, had become a sanctuary. The sunlight in the morning spilled across the living room floor, and I would watch Buddy and Max stretch and yawn, their contentment infectious. Their presence was a daily reminder that life, despite its horrors, could still offer comfort and joy. I kept a strict schedule, partly out of habit, partly out of a need to reclaim control. Mornings were for the dogs and a short walk through the neighborhood. I greeted a few neighbors now with a warm smile, keeping interactions brief but genuine. Most people had stopped asking about the trial. Those who had believed Michael's side had quietly drifted away. I didn't mind. Life had its own way of sorting truth from fiction. Samuel became more than a friend. He became my anchor. We shared meals, discussed books, and even tinkered with woodworking projects together. His presence reminded me that not all human relationships were fraught with deception or danger. He never pushed me to discuss Michael unless I was ready, and when I did, he listened without judgment. Volunteering became an unexpected source of healing. At the community center, I taught basic home repair and woodworking skills to elderly people who, like me, had faced manipulation, scams, or familial pressure. One man, George, had nearly been convinced to sign over his savings to a distant relative. I gave him Jennifer's card immediately. "Don't wait," I told him firmly. "Trust your instincts, protect yourself." Each session, each success story, reinforced that I was no longer powerless. My experience had become a shield for others. Therapy with Dr. Rachel Stone continued weekly. We worked through the complicated layers of grief for the son I had lost to greed, for the relationship I had believed existed, and for the innocence that was stolen. "Surviving does mean you stop loving," she reminded me. "It means you choose to protect yourself while still carrying love in your heart, even if it's painful." Small pleasures became my focus. Evenings were quiet, spent in my hobby room, finishing woodworking projects or reading. Music filled the air, sometimes classical, sometimes jazz, sometimes the soft melodies of Helen's favorite songs. I began to cook again, experimenting with recipes I had long ignored. For the first time in years, the act of preparing a meal became meditative rather than mundane. The financial resources that had once made me a target were now tools for good. The Animal Rescue League had named a kennel in my and Helen's honor, a tangible reminder of the joy our contributions brought. Scholarships for trade school students were already in motion. 4 students had begun their training. And I spent some of the money on myself, modestly. A new set of woodworking tools, a weekend trip to the mountains with Walter, and small indulgences that reminded me life was still worth enjoying. Letters from Michael continued to arrive, though Jennifer screened them carefully. Each one was filled with blame and entitlement, but I never responded. I realized responding would not bring healing. It would reopen wounds and risk emotional manipulation. Instead, I focused on the present, on the life I was building, and on the people who had supported me through the nightmare. Over time, the nightmares began to fade. I no longer woke with a jolt imagining Michael climbing through my window. Even when I remembered the fear, it no longer held power over me. Buddy and Max, sleeping peacefully at my feet, reminded me that reality was different now. I was safe, and I had reclaimed my home and my life. Community support grew organically. Friends from woodworking class, card games, and volunteering became a network of trust and companionship. These were people who understood resilience, who had faced challenges of their own, and who valued honesty, safety, and respect. In their company, I found laughter and shared moments of joy, a balm for the months of tension and fear I had endured. I also took steps to document and secure my estate further. Jennifer helped me update my will once more, ensuring that the money would be used for causes Helen and I cared about, with Michael specifically excluded. Colorado law, especially given his conviction, allowed this, and I felt a sense of relief knowing that my resources could no longer be used against me. One afternoon, as I worked in the garden, Samuel joined me. We planted tulips and roses along the walkway, their bright colors a symbol of resilience and life. "You've built something stronger than walls and cameras," he said quietly. "You've built a life that honors yourself and your choices." The sense of peace I had longed for was finally tangible. I was no longer haunted by the constant fear of Michael's manipulations. I was engaged with life, surrounded by friends, and contributing to the community in meaningful ways. The house, once a fortress, had become a home again, a place of laughter, learning, and love. Though the pain of losing the son I thought I knew would never disappear entirely, it became part of a larger story of survival and self-preservation. I had endured betrayal, danger, and fear, and emerged not only alive but empowered. The choices I had made, though difficult, had preserved my life and allowed me to rebuild with purpose and clarity. And in the quiet moments, when Buddy and Max napped in the sun, Samuel's laughter echoed from the kitchen, and the garden bloomed vibrantly, I allowed myself to feel something I had not in a long time: hope. The future, once uncertain and threatening, now held possibility. I had survived. I had reclaimed my life, and for the first time in years I was truly free. The weeks after the trial became a period of gentle rebuilding, almost meditative in its consistency. Each morning I followed a quiet ritual: wake with the sun, let Buddy and Max stretch their legs in the garden, and take a few deep breaths as I sipped my coffee. The scent of fresh earth, mingled with morning dew and blooming flowers, reminded me that life, despite all the darkness, continued in small, beautiful cycles. Samuel was now more than a friend. He was a constant presence in my life. He understood boundaries without needing explanations, never prying but always supportive. We began sharing small routines: morning walks, afternoons fixing broken furniture, evenings working on woodworking projects. These projects, once simple distractions, became exercises in patience and focus, grounding me in the reality of creation instead of the chaos of betrayal. I also began teaching at the community center more regularly. My classes weren't just about fixing furniture or basic home repair. They were about empowerment. I encouraged attendees, especially the elderly, to assert their independence, to recognize manipulation, and to trust their instincts. George, the man I had helped early on, became a regular, always eager to share tips he had learned or stories of friends he had advised. Seeing others regain control over their lives reminded me of the lessons I had fought so hard to learn. At home, life felt alive in a way it hadn't since Helen had passed. The dogs were constant companions, their energy infectious. I'd adopted a routine of training and caring for them, and their unconditional loyalty was a salve for old wounds. I never imagined that caring for two golden retrievers would bring so much laughter and calm. Max had a habit of chasing his tail in the late afternoon, and Buddy would bark at his antics as if he were judging him. Watching them, I often laughed aloud, a sound I realized I hadn't made in months. I stayed vigilant. Jennifer had reinforced the importance of ongoing security. The cameras were checked weekly, the locks inspected, and my personal alarm button stayed within reach at all times. But vigilance no longer felt like fear. It was a form of empowerment. I had survived threats that would terrify anyone, and now the tools I used were for protection, not paranoia. My relationships with people began to deepen in new ways. Walter became a steady companion in my life, someone who had seen the extremes of my ordeal and never questioned my judgment or intentions. We took short trips together, a weekend in the mountains, a quiet week in Arizona, exploring places I had always wanted to see but never dared to, because I was either cautious or consumed by fear. Each trip reinforced the reality that life could still hold joy, adventure, and peace. I also took care to integrate healing into my daily routines. Therapy sessions with Dr. Rachel Stone became a cornerstone of my emotional well-being. We explored grief, betrayal, and the complicated spectrum of parental love. "It's possible to love someone and still protect yourself from them," she said in one session, echoing a lesson I was learning firsthand. Both truths can coexist. It was a concept I repeated to myself every day. The financial resources I had protected were now a source of positive change. Donations to the Animal Rescue League had grown, and their staff often sent updates, photos, and stories of the animals thriving under care I had helped fund. Scholarships for trade school students had sent 4 young people into programs that would provide them with careers and independence. I spent some money on myself, too. A new set of woodworking tools, a better camera to document the garden's progress, and small luxuries that reminded me life was worth enjoying. Evenings often found me in the garden, tending to tulips, roses, and the small herb patch I had started. Samuel sometimes joined, helping me plant or prune, but often we worked in companionable silence. The act of nurturing life, watching it grow day by day, became a metaphor for my own recovery. Just as I cared for these plants, I was learning to care for myself, body, mind, and spirit. Occasionally, letters from Michael arrived, always screened by Jennifer. They were filled with blame, guilt-tripping, and demands, but I no longer felt the pull to respond. These letters were remnants of a past I had survived. They were powerless against the life I was actively building. Community involvement remained central to my sense of purpose. I started mentoring neighbors on financial security, estate planning, and recognizing the warning signs of manipulation and abuse. One elderly woman, Claire, had been pressured by a distant relative to sign over control of her savings. After a few conversations, she updated her will and installed new security measures, much like I had done. Each success story reinforced that my ordeal could have purpose beyond survival. It could educate and protect others. Time brought peace in subtle forms. The neighborhood, once buzzing with gossip about my family, settled back into routine. The cameras, the new locks, and the reinforced windows became invisible to daily life. They were safety tools, not barriers. I learned to trust again, cautiously, selectively, and deliberately. The weight of grief for Michael remained, but it softened over time. It was not the grief of loss to death, but of loss to betrayal. He had been my son, the child I had raised, but his choices had severed that connection irreparably. In quiet moments, I allowed myself to remember the good times without opening the wound of what had happened. Buddy and Max remained my constants, alert and joyful. Walter and Samuel provided human companionship, guidance, and laughter. I began documenting my experiences in a journal, hoping that someday these lessons might guide someone else facing a similar nightmare. Evenings often ended with a quiet sense of fulfillment. I had survived an impossible ordeal, faced danger and betrayal, and emerged with my independence, security, and dignity intact. I could rest, not in complacency, but in the confidence that I had built a life worth living, resilient and strong. And for the first time in years, the future looked promising, full of potential and completely mine. Months turned into a year, and life settled into a rhythm of quiet purpose. I had reclaimed my home, my security, and most importantly, my sense of self. Mornings began with the soft chorus of Buddy and Max nudging me awake, their fur warm under my hand as I stretched and greeted the day. I spent a few moments tending the garden, watering new seedlings and trimming flowers with care. Each leaf, each bloom, felt like a small victory, a reminder that growth was always possible, even after trauma. Samuel remained a steady presence. Our friendship had deepened into something almost familial, a bond forged in shared experience and understanding. We shared meals, laughter, and even comfortable silences. His presence reminded me that safety was not just about locks and alarms. It was about surrounding myself with people who truly had my best interests at heart. Therapy with Dr. Rachel Stone continued to be a cornerstone of my recovery. Together, we worked through the layers of grief, betrayal, and guilt that lingered. "You are allowed to grieve the son you thought you had," she said one afternoon, her voice calm and unwavering. "And you are allowed to love yourself at the same time." I repeated those words to myself often, especially on days when memories of Michael and the life I had imagined felt heavy. Volunteering became a passion. At the community center, I taught home repair, financial awareness, and basic self-defense for the elderly. Each class was a chance to empower others, to give them the tools to protect themselves and make informed decisions. I found purpose in guiding others through situations similar to mine, helping them recognize manipulation and assert boundaries before harm could occur. One of the most fulfilling projects was mentoring George and a few other neighbors in updating their estate planning. Watching their relief as they regained control over their lives was deeply rewarding. They often brought small gifts, like fresh-baked bread or homemade jam, but the real reward was knowing they were safer and more confident because of the guidance I could provide. My home had transformed into a sanctuary. The broken window that Michael had attempted to climb through was replaced with reinforced glass, the frame solid and secure. Buddy and Max ran freely in the yard without fear, and I felt the peace of safety in every corner. The guest bedroom became a workshop and reading space, a room filled with tools, books, and plans for small projects. It symbolized how I had taken back not only my home, but my life. Financially, I was deliberate and strategic. The money Michael had wanted so desperately was now a source of real good. I increased donations to the Animal Rescue League, which had named a kennel in honor of my and Helen's contributions. Scholarships for trade school students expanded to reach 6 young adults that year, giving them opportunities they might never have had. The balance of giving and personal enjoyment felt right. I bought better woodworking tools, new gardening supplies, and even indulged in small trips with Walter, weekend getaways to the mountains or quiet lakeside cabins. The letters from Michael, carefully filtered by Jennifer, continued to arrive but no longer had power over me. Each one was an exercise in detachment. I read, acknowledged, and set it aside. I no longer felt compelled to defend myself or justify my choices. The past was documented, secured, and behind me. My focus was forward. Socially, I built new connections. Friends from woodworking class, card games, and community volunteering became part of my extended support network. We shared stories, laughter, and quiet understanding. These were relationships built on mutual respect, shared interests, and trust, relationships free from manipulation and danger. Emotionally, I faced days that were still hard. Occasionally, dreams of Michael climbing through the window would wake me in a cold sweat, but I no longer felt helpless. The alarms, the cameras, the security, and the network of friends who knew what had happened gave me confidence. I had survived an unimaginable betrayal, and each day reinforced that I was strong, capable, and resilient. I also began journaling regularly, documenting both the challenges I had faced and the growth I was experiencing. The journal became a guide for my own reflection and a resource for others. Perhaps, someday, it could serve as a warning or a blueprint for someone navigating similar circumstances. My experiences, harrowing as they were, had meaning beyond survival. They could educate, protect, and empower. Time provided perspective. I understood now that love for a child did not require ignoring harm. Protecting myself did not make me cruel. Acting decisively, setting boundaries, and pursuing justice were acts of strength, not betrayal. Michael had chosen a path of greed and violence. I had chosen one of survival, integrity, and growth. That distinction became clearer with each passing day. Evenings often ended in quiet reflection. Sitting in my favorite chair, with Buddy curled at my feet and Max asleep by the door, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Life was simpler now, focused on small joys, meaningful relationships, and purposeful actions. I had survived the unimaginable and emerged with clarity, safety, and dignity intact. Looking back, I saw that the ordeal had reshaped me. I was more vigilant, more independent, more aware of human complexity, and more compassionate to those who faced manipulation and abuse. My story, though painful, had given me the tools and courage to not just survive but thrive. And as I looked forward, I realized something important. Life's fragility made each moment more precious. The betrayal I endured had taken much from me, but it had also given me wisdom, resilience, and the ability to help others avoid similar fates. Each act of teaching, each gesture of kindness, each moment of personal joy became a testament to the life I had reclaimed. I never forgot Michael, but the grief and anger associated with him were no longer chains. They were lessons. Lessons in vigilance, in courage, in trusting instincts, and in the necessity of setting boundaries. I had loved him, and in doing so, I had learned that love sometimes requires difficult choices and hard truths. My life now was mine entirely, secure, intentional, joyful, and free. And in that freedom, I discovered a profound truth. Survival is not just about avoiding harm, it's about reclaiming life, purpose, and peace after it has been threatened. Time passed with a rhythm that felt steady, almost healing. Each morning I woke to the soft warmth of sunlight spilling into the living room, Buddy and Max stretching beside me, their presence a comforting heartbeat of life and loyalty. I no longer felt the constant tension that had once shadowed every step, every sound, every visitor at the door. My home, once a place of fear and suspicion, was now a sanctuary of calm and safety. Evenings became a favorite time of reflection. I'd sit in the hobby room, surrounded by woodworking projects, gardening tools, and a few stacks of books I'd been meaning to read for years. The gentle hum of daily life, punctuated by Buddy's low snore or Max nudging a ball toward me, reminded me that I was not only alive but thriving. Life had returned in layers I hadn't realized I'd missed. The quiet joy of independence, the satisfaction of creating, the peace of knowing I was in control. The legal aftermath with Michael and Derek had concluded, leaving scars but also a sense of closure. Derek's plea deal and prison sentence served justice for his actions, and Michael's conviction and long-term imprisonment reinforced the consequences of choices fueled by greed and violence. It was painful to accept that my son, the boy I had raised with love and hope, was irreparably lost to darkness. But understanding didn't mean forgiveness. It meant clarity, a way to move forward without fear dictating my life. I continued therapy with Dr. Rachel Stone, each session peeling back layers of trauma, grief, and guilt. She reminded me that the love I felt for Michael didn't vanish because he betrayed that trust. It evolved into something more complex, tempered by experience and survival. I was learning to separate my identity as a father from the mistakes of my son, to find peace without condoning his actions. Daily life included the simple pleasures I had long neglected. I devoted time to woodworking, crafting small pieces for friends and the community center. The garden flourished under my care, vibrant flowers and vegetables providing tangible rewards for patience and attention. Evenings often found me teaching neighborhood workshops on basic home repair and financial awareness for elderly people, helping them establish security, assert boundaries, and protect themselves against potential exploitation. Financially, I felt a profound satisfaction in how my resources were now being used. The Animal Rescue League had named a kennel in honor of my late wife Helen and me, ensuring a lasting legacy for the animals we both loved. Trade school scholarships provided opportunities for young adults seeking practical skills, while donations to a local homeless shelter addressed immediate human needs. Each dollar felt purposeful, meaningful, and a stark contrast to the greed-driven motives of Michael and Derek. I was creating impact, not chaos. Friendships deepened. Samuel and Walter remained pillars of support, steady, trustworthy, and present. Walter often joined me for card games and weekend trips, while Samuel provided counsel and companionship when reflection or action demanded it. They had seen the worst, and yet they never judged. Their presence reminded me that chosen family, built on respect and shared values, could be as meaningful as biological ties. I also learned the value of discretion. Michael's letters, filtered through Jennifer, arrived occasionally, each one a mixture of excuses, blame, and demands. I read them without engagement, acknowledging reality but refusing to let old ties dictate my emotions or choices. I had reclaimed my power, and with it, a profound sense of peace. Security remained a priority, though now more as a reassurance than a constant vigilance. Reinforced windows, new locks, motion sensors, cameras, all provided tangible evidence that I was safe. But the true security lay in knowledge, preparation, and the network of people who had my back. No system alone could offer peace without the awareness and courage to act. Over time, the neighborhood adapted. Initial gossip faded into acceptance. I was Thomas, the man with the dogs, the quiet neighbor who fixed things and helped others when needed. My reputation was no longer defined by scandal, but by resilience, kindness, and active engagement with the community. Old friendships lost to disbelief or denial were replaced by connections that mattered, people who recognized the truth and respected boundaries. Emotionally, I was rebuilding layers I hadn't realized were damaged. I mourned the son I had thought I had, the trust I had given, and the innocence that had once existed. But grief transformed into clarity. I understood now that protecting oneself did not equate to cruelty. Establishing boundaries was an act of love for oneself, a recognition that survival and well-being were sacred priorities. Legacy became more intentional. I began documenting my experiences, not as a story of vengeance or fear, but as a guide for others. Notes, recordings, and lessons on estate planning, elder financial protection, and recognizing manipulative behavior were organized for those who might one day face similar threats. My nightmare had purpose beyond survival. It could serve as education and empowerment for the vulnerable. Travel and exploration added richness to my days. Walter and I ventured into the mountains, traveled to Arizona, and discovered small towns and scenic vistas. I embraced the freedom to plan and enjoy my life without the weight of manipulation or threat. These trips were not escapes, but celebrations of regained agency, opportunities to live fully after surviving betrayal and danger. Dr. Stone reminded me often, you can love without surrendering your safety. You can remember without reliving trauma. You can grieve and yet live fully. I carried that lesson into every interaction, every decision. Every day. I had survived not only the threat of death and theft, but the erosion of trust from the very person I had loved most. My home reflected this new life. The broken window replaced, doors secure, rooms organized around comfort and purpose. Buddy and Max thrived, filling the space with warmth and joy. I had repurposed the guest bedroom into a hobby and reflection space. The house was no longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary. 8 months after Michael's trial, I looked forward with intention. I had rebuilt my life, established new routines, nurtured meaningful friendships, and invested in causes that mattered. Security, purpose, and joy coexisted seamlessly. I had chosen safety without abandoning compassion. I had chosen life without allowing fear to dominate. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, I realized something profound. The greatest victories were not in courtroom judgments or arrests, but in reclaiming my own existence. In surviving, in creating, in loving life even after betrayal. The nightmare was behind me, but its lessons remained. A guide to vigilance, resilience, and the courage to protect oneself even from those closest. Michael's absence, though painful, became a space for peace. Derek's cooperation and imprisonment brought closure. My choices ensured the resources I had saved my whole life were put to meaningful use, a legacy far removed from the greed and entitlement that had once threatened to destroy me. I had survived betrayal, attempted murder, and exploitation. I had prosecuted the crimes, established boundaries, and reclaimed my life. And in doing so, I had discovered a truth. Survival is not passive. It is an act of courage, decisiveness, and purpose. Life after trauma can be vibrant, meaningful, and full of love, though it may look different from what we had imagined. If you ever find yourself in a situation where trust is violated, where danger lurks within those closest to you, remember this. Choose yourself. Protect your safety, honor your instincts, and never allow fear or obligation to dictate your life. And when you survive, use your experience to help others, to teach, to guide, and to create a legacy rooted in wisdom and courage. The dogs nuzzled my hands, the evening air carried the scent of the garden, and I knew with absolute clarity that I was finally home. Safe, alive, free, and I would never compromise that again.